Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to Tara House for what is the last Monday night teaching for this year. Now hopefully you can all hear me clearly. It's normally I sit on the floor rather than the chair, but probably physically a bit challenging for me to be on the floor. But next year will be good. Okay, so obviously we're heading into Christmas. And we've been able to make it here tonight. It's good to reflect just how incredibly fortunate that we are. That we have a human life, we have our human intelligence and wisdom. Hopefully we all have a healthy body, or a body that's functioning okay. And we've been born into a place where we've got adequate resources and adequate health care and education, all those sorts of things. And also freedom and opportunity to develop our inner qualities and pursue whichever form of spiritual practice or tradition suits our personality or suits our needs at the time. So all those conditions have come for us in this time and place. So really that's incredibly fortunate. And with this we all have a human potential. We have this. We're a body-mind complex. We're a body, a physical body, comes in different shapes and sizes and ages, etc. And also we have a mind, or a consciousness. And that mind is defined by being clear and aware. So the nature of the mind is clarity, or its pure nature is clarity, and it is able to be aware or to know. A little bit like a mirror can reflect things. So we can be aware or cognise what's around us. Within our mind and heart, we have the potential to develop unlimited wisdom in terms of understanding the true nature of our mind, of our being, and also develop other qualities such as unlimited warmth within our heart and unlimited love and compassion. And also at this time we've all come across a path where we've met qualified teachers. I'm talking about people such as His Holiness Dalai Lama, for example, or Lama Zopa, for example, or if you're around long enough ago, Lama Yeshe, for example, or more recently this year, for example, someone like Kyabjin Ling Rinpoche who came here, or Jado Rinpoche in Bendigo. And of course also really Geshe Doga. And Geshe Doga was a teacher who's 90 years old. And he was born in Kham, in eastern Tibet, in 1935. And he was born at a time and place where the sort of big lifestyle he had been there for like 1,000 years, really without much change. There was a village life, there's obviously no radio, there's no running water, there's no toilet system. Cooking is using either wood or yak dung, for example. Clothing is very basic. So he's come from a life of existence that's very, very different to ours. And when he was, I think, about 15 or 16, he spent 3 months travelling from Kham, eastern Tibet, to Lhasa, and to Sarah Jane Monastery. And he was able to study, and he did the traditional study, and the life of hardship. I know a dentist I once met who looked at Geshe Doga's teeth. So there were signs he'd had malnutrition, for example, during part of his life. And of course in 1959 the Chinese came along, and the Tibetans had a choice either stay there under Chinese rule or to leave. So Geshe Doga left, and endured, along with a lot of other monks, nuns and lay people, endured a lot of hardship, eventually ended up in India. And then sort of, I guess in the early 80s, ended up in Copeland Monastery. And then Lama Yeshe asked him to come here to Australia, so he came to Australia in 1983. And if we look at modern Australia, he's been in Australia since then, so more than 40 years, but what's interesting, look at where he started, his life where he started. This extraordinary being who studied really, really hard in the Tibetan monastic system, came to India, completed his studies, And so developed, and he did completely studies at the highest level. And then also, as a meditator, he's a hidden yogi. You know, while his body's old, in terms of what he can do with his mind, his subtle body, subtle mind, is something that I have minimal comprehension of. And it's very hard to, because he's just at such a different level to the ordinary being. And there are other lamas like him, but he's that remnant old generation who primarily trained in Tibet. So to have a contact with someone like that is really, really extraordinary and something that's really precious and special. So we're sort of in this amazing, extraordinary good fortune that we have met someone who's got those qualities and who can inspire us and lead us along the path. And I sort of think of myself, I'm a maths teacher by training. Well, that's still my job. Actually, wasn't that by training, originally I was an entomologist. I'm a maths teacher. I look at, say, like a primary school kid, they would look at, say, someone like me, a teacher, say, Year 12 maths or a university lecturer or something like that, or a professor, and they wouldn't be able to comprehend the difference between me and someone who's far more advanced. Because they just don't have the knowledge or the insight. And I feel the same when I look at someone like Geshe Doga. I just don't have adequate knowledge, either intellectual knowledge or inner experience to really comprehend the qualities that he has. I just get a tiny sense of it now and then. Really, I just don't know enough. But the other thing is, we have this extraordinary being amongst our midst and other extraordinary beings who come here. And we've had the amazing good fortune to meet them and to be given the encouragement, the inspiration, as much to the best of our ability to progress on the path in terms of developing our kindness, our inner joyfulness, our inner peacefulness, our inner calmness, our ability to understand how our mind works, our ability to understand that our happiness doesn't come from what's outside, but comes from what we come from inside and the sorts of qualities that we develop. So it's really good for us to rejoice in the amazing good fortune we currently have with this human life and the potential opportunity that we have in terms of how we can use or direct our life. And of course, through this Christmas period, for some people it's a joyous event, for other people it can be challenging for various reasons, whether a person who's alone or a person who lives in a part of a family where there's some conflict or disharmony, or they've got their own inner mental problems or difficulties they're dealing with. Or there might be, for example, they've had relatives who've died in the last year. And so in that situation where there's been a death in a family, landmark events like Christmas can be quite difficult to work your way through because you've got this memory recall of someone you've been with for a short time or a long time who's no longer with us. And that brings up its own sadness and sense of loss and difficulty as well. And so, for a range of reasons, Christmas can be a bit difficult. Can be difficult for us, but also hopefully it can be an aspect of being joyous as well. And of course, if we look in terms of the Christian tradition, the Christian tradition says in terms of Christ, it was God who actually said, coming, sending his son down, or like in Buddhist language, emanating, or taking birth in the human realm in order to help living beings or human beings and help them sort of deal with their sins, or in the language we would use now might be their non-virtues, and to help encourage them to sort of a better life, towards something which is better in terms of sorts of values that they should be trying to develop. And similarly for us, obviously, we're trying to develop a set of values, and we're trying to develop, say, ethical behaviour. So, for example, like the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie. All those things are pretty similar in terms of Buddhism with all the 10 non-virtues. And the reason we're taught those things is that's the way, for example, to look after what we do with our body, the actions we create with our body, the actions we create in terms of what we say or our speech, and some of the actions of our mind. And so it's like it's listed out for us to help protect us from doing things that will be unskillful. And if we look at, I guess, how Buddhism defines things, it would say a non-virtue or an unskillful action will have an unhappy result. So if we do something that has an unhappy result, we can say that's a negative action, a non-virtue action, or we could use the Christian ancient say that's a sin. On the other hand, if we do the opposite of those things, then we're creating virtue or positive actions, which will bring us happiness both in this life and in the future. And of course, every single living being is seeking happiness. We're all seeking happiness. When we came here today, part of our motivation is we're looking for happiness. I'm looking for happiness, you're looking for happiness. And in actuality, we're all equal in wanting happiness. And the other thing, of course, is none of us wants to experience unhappiness. In other words, where we have experienced various forms of suffering, whether it's physical suffering or some sort of emotional disturbance, or suffering at a more subtle level. Now when we investigate, again, these things that we don't want to experience suffering. Now of course what we find is living beings have different methods or techniques to try and find happiness and to try and avoid suffering. Now sometimes those methods or techniques are skillful, sometimes they're not skillful, it's just mistaken or wrong view. So some people might think, well, if I steal, take something from someone's, this will make me happy because now I've got this particular object. But in reality, it doesn't make them happy. And I guess for us, and what we need to do was we have the process of meditation, where we'll sit down and we'll calm or quieten our mind. And then with awareness, as we do our daily actions, with a bit of awareness and witness, we can see as we do these daily actions, what sort of effect does it have in our mind? Does it help to calm our mind and make it more still and calm and peaceful? Or do we experience an inner disturbance or uncomfortableness that's starting to arise within this sort of negative or harm vibration? Do we start to feel that in terms of if we have a negative thought arising, we do a negative action? And if we've got, I guess, in many ways we talk about having a sense of consciousness. But that sense of consciousness can be developed from the point of view that the more inner awareness we have, or our inner wisdom, we're more tuned in to what's going to help us find happiness and what disturbs our happiness. And so we can then use that inner wisdom that we develop through meditation, and whether it's analytical meditation or contemplation, and then the stillness or silent meditation, just purely watching nature and mind, for example, to develop more and more insight of what's going on inside and how things work for us. So all of us are we are trying to find happiness, we're trying to avoid happiness, and obviously being in a place like this, and especially meeting people like Geshe Doga or Geshe Doga, then we get the opportunity to get very, very detailed, either simple teachings or very detailed and deep, profound teachings on how to work with our mind and the different aspects of mind, both at a gross level and also at a more subtle level, and yes, but also the more profound levels if we're looking at practices within what's called the Vajrayana or Tantrayana practices, the use of visualization, recitation, mantra, and all those sorts of things. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that for us. Now I think with Christmas, I guess there's a whole range of potential difficulties. For some people it's financial, it becomes financial pressure. As I said before, loneliness can be another issue for some. Having to mix with people that we find challenging in one way or the other, because we tend to not be able to stay away from most of the year, but come Christmas we gather together. Sometimes we're trying to paper over the cracks of disharmony that might be occurring within the relationships we have. And of course we might run into overindulgence in terms of our food or drink, or disappointment about our Christmas presents, or not meeting people's expectations, etc. So there's a whole range of, I guess we would say perhaps, little pitfalls or traps that may or may not be there for us. And so, how do we protect ourselves? I guess One, our motivation. One, calm mind. Second, what's our motivation? So if our motivation is for me, we're going to struggle. If our motivation is, okay, how can I use this opportunity to benefit others, or at least not harm others, it's going to be a lot easier for us. So I guess it's to some extent stating the obvious, but the motivation for anything you do is really important. If we set the right motivation beforehand, I didn't realise really every day when we get up, what we're encouraged to do is let's do a quick review. Just go, for example, well, I'm alive today. And that's a really good start, because one day that won't be the case. So I'm looking around the room, it's obvious that no one in your house found a corpse in your bed this morning. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. So that's good news for a start. Just reflect, we could think, I'm really fortunate today. I'm still alive. I've got a chance to develop my inner qualities, to enjoy being with other people, etc. And to try and say, okay, let's set a motivation for today that the actions I do with what I do with my body or what I say or what I think, that these are going to benefit both myself and other people. Okay? So we're trying to start the day with a positive attitude. And then if we sort of push the envelope a bit further, we can sort of head towards that motivation. At the moment my life is under the control of delusion and karma. I need to sort of seek freedom from that. And that's pushing a bit further along the line, or far more challenging, because we need to be aware, have that awareness that we're being propelled by delusion and karma all the time. And that takes a lot of work to get to that point. And then also the other one, of course, the Sanskrit Buddhist bodhicitta, where we look and think, well, I'm not the only person who's in this existence under the control of delusional afflicted emotions and karma that result from the different things I do under the influence of ignorance, attachment, or anger or hatred. Everyone else is in the same boat as me. And wouldn't it be fantastic if I could do, and we look to be aware of our connection with all living beings, and we're dependent on our happiness and well-being for every other living being. Well, it's our food, it's our clothing, it's the opportunity to practice patience for example, the people who sort of work in our car, repair our house, all those things, we're dependent on others. They may not intentionally think they're helping us, but without them we can't survive. It's as simple as that. And especially if we have a situation in life where we get sick or quite ill, and we become dependent, and that'll tend to happen especially with old age, but even when you're younger, for example, if you have an operation or something like that, you are very dependent on other people for a while. And so if you've got someone who's looking after you in that situation, dependent, that's something we can see, this is really special, this person's looked after me, and provided that level of kindness to me. And it might have been only a week or two. This is really special. We look further, of course, we look at our mother in this life, and our parents. It was more than a week or two they looked after us. Not only, as an adult you looked after, probably you can still use a toilet, you can probably still clean your bottoms, they don't need, maybe you've got to bring your cups of tea and do the cleaning and cook your food and all that sort of stuff. But when you look at your parents, the level of care they've given us, that level of care is all the time. They've got to clean your bottom, they've got to change your clothes, protect you, feed you, keep you warm, nurse you, nurture you, provide you with love and warmth. This happens for many years. Gradually as you grow up you think you're more independent, and you're probably arrogant enough that I don't need my parents anymore. And you forget about what they've done for you. But it's really good for us, as part of our motivation today, is to have a sense of gratitude for the love and care and warmth and attention that different individuals have given us, whether it's our parents when we were younger, or even now, if they're still alive for us. And of course the other people, whether it's our partners, for example, our children, or our friends, etc., who sort of touch base with you, checking to see how you're going, all that sort of stuff. We do receive a lot of care and nurture and help from others. So if we can have a sense of gratitude, is really important. And of course the modern psychologists say that one of the things about well-being, to develop positive well-being or positive self-esteem, is to actually have a sense of gratitude. Gratefulness for the things that we've received, that we have in our life, or we continue to receive. So going forward, so obviously we're talking about motivation. Of course, the ultimate motivation is, can I develop the inner qualities to help and guide others? So as I develop qualities, I can help other people develop those qualities as well. And of course, what we realise is at the moment, is if we compare ourselves to people who are really, really developed, such as Geshe Doga, for example, Geshe Doga, etc., and his hostile lung, all those sorts of people. They've got qualities far beyond us. But at the same time, we all do have some qualities, and we do have some capacity to help and guide others when they're undergoing difficulty. But that capacity is limited. So what we're trying to do is develop the motivation thing. I need to use what I do today to develop those qualities more and more and more. So over the remainder of this life, and however long it takes, I will aspire to become that sort of being who has limitless ability to help others in whatever situation they're in and whatever level of need that they require in that time and space, and to have that skill. And so we can aspire to that, and then we sort of try and engage in various meditational practices to help develop those skills and qualities within ourselves. Now, I was thinking the last few days, in terms of Christmas, probably one of the most important things for us, which we tend to meet or gather with people, is harmony. Being able to be harmonious, bring harmony to that family gathering or friend Christmas parties that we go to. And part of with that, of course, there's an interesting quote in the teachings, which basically says, when alone, watch your mind, when with others, watch your speech. And so obviously we've talked about motivation beforehand, which is setting the right mental attitude and hopefully developing a bit of warmth and openness within our hearts. So when we interact with others, we're less judgmental in terms of what they might say or do, or how they annoy us, for example. We can sort of be more open to being able to let go of the things that might inconvenience us, annoy us. But also we have enough self-awareness. If we do get annoyed, we can be careful about what we say. And of course, as we know in various work situations, people get together, it's fairly easy for some people to start criticising someone or discussing in depth the faults of someone that's not particularly popular as someone who's done, often in leadership, who you might be somewhat critical of, you think you could have done a much better job, or they have their clueless of it. There's a whole range of reasons why we might find fault in various people in terms of the work situation. And of course in a family situation, there can be obviously a history that might go back most of your life as well, where for whatever reason there has been some difficulties or miscommunication, or there is a person who's straight out difficult, or a group of people are difficult, or I might be difficult, the one who's difficult, or a whole range of things. But I guess one of our challenges of going through this Christmas period is to see, can we maintain at least harmonious relationships with others, and in an ideal world try and each person we meet or greet or interact with, to treat them with some level of warmth and kindness from our heart, as much as we can. Now, I could talk for a lot longer, but that's probably enough. We should do a little bit of meditation, shouldn't we? So let's get ourselves in a nice, comfortable posture or position if we can. And the main thing is, in all of this, is to have a straight back. Have the head tilted forward very slightly, the eyes almost closed. Hands, the right hand on top of the left hand, and then the two thumbs touching So if you're looking down, it'll be sitting over the top of your second finger. Like I said, elbow slightly out. We breathe in a relaxed manner, so we're not trying to regulate our breath. And our tongue, we'll place the tip of the tongue so it's just touching the base of the top teeth, or the palate of our mouth. And that'll regulate the dryness and moisture of our mouth. So now what we're going to do is we need to let go of the busyness and activity we've been engaged in today, or perhaps if we're tired, allow that tiredness to sort of drain out of us a bit. And to just relax ourselves a little bit. And we're going to place our awareness on the breath coming in out of the nostrils for a number of minutes. And just be aware of the breath coming in through the nostrils, going all the way down to the abdomen, where you feel our abdomen moving up or down, and then going back out again. So as we're aware of our breath coming in and out, hopefully our mind will gradually calm down as we've withdrawn ourselves from sensory stimuli. In other words, the things we can see, hear, smell, taste or touch. But probably you're going to find that our mind will still have various thoughts going through it. And especially if we've arrived here today in an agitated state of mind, that agitation is going to take a while to sort of settle down. We give it time it will, and we don't need to try and stop the agitation, we don't need to try and stop the thoughts, but as they come and go, we will be aware of them, and all we need to do is not get involved. So a thought arises, we let it go, we bring our awareness back to the breath. If we have some agitation arising in our heart, again, just try to let go of that agitation and bring our awareness to the breath. So we're not trying to suppress the agitation, we're not trying to suppress the thoughts. We are being there with them. But as we sit still and become more calm, our mind, which is a little bit like cloudy water that's been stirred up, will start to become still. And the sediment, the stuff moving through the water, will settle to the bottom to reveal the clarity of our mind and the calmness of our mind. So that's what we're trying to achieve at the moment through just focusing on the breath. So we'll do that for several minutes now. So now that we've got our minds a bit more settled and still, just see if you can recollect some things that have, either from today or in recent times, that you can have gratitude for. And as that sense of gratitude arises within you, just sit with that feeling of gratitude at your heart as it arises. And if it diminishes, then sort of go back and recall some other things where you can develop a sense of gratitude. And when that sense of gratitude arises, just sit with that feeling, stop the thinking process and sit with that feeling for a while. Okay, so we might stop our meditation now. How are we feeling? Feeling better? Good. Ready to face Christmas? It's only 10 days, only 10 more sleeps to go, isn't it? Or no? Okay, so this is the usual time. We've got any questions or comments? It doesn't have to relate to tonight. You've got something else you want to chat? No, so that's just okay. Otherwise, I could inquisition you and ask you questions instead. Okay, who's not looking forward to Christmas?
When did they start up again? When does Monday night start again?
Oh, the Monday night's a good question.
6.
I know. I think January. I think it's more meditations rather than talks. The actual talks will probably, I think the first 1 month will be February. But there's definitely look in the newsletter, and there's some out there always. There's a Monday night.
There was no mention of it.
Yeah, now the actual Monday night like this will be start again in February. I know I'm slotted in for May of next year. Can't remember who the other ones are. With the regulars like Damien and Jeremy, etc. Like Jeremy had last week.
There's something in January.
The 6th of January.
Yeah, it's not the first. It's not the first.
Yeah, January there's Monday night meditations, remember, and Wednesday night meditations as well. And I know New Year's Eve at 8 o'clock. There's some formal prayers. Come together as a group, do formal prayers for an hour to bring in the new year. Yeah. Someone's got to ask a question or say something.
Well, I thought that was a very useful meditation. A very useful meditation
Okay. Good,
ahead
yeah.
of Christmas, and as you say, it is sometimes quite a fraught time, full of mixed emotions.
Yeah. It can be a busy time, I know. And there's family obligations, and especially you're young and you've got different parents to go to and all those sorts of things. Who's negotiating all that can be tricky. And of course also negotiating who does the work, and I know in some families there's always one person does the work year after year after year. And other people don't help out as much as they should, for example. And that can be, I guess, can be a source of annoyance, is one way, but I guess if you're that person, the opportunity, from a Buddhist point of view, we say, well, that's okay, let's try and change our mental attitude. It's an offering. We're practicing generosity, trying to provide kindness and care to other people. By giving them good food and being welcoming and warm and all that sort of thing. And that models the sort of behaviour that hopefully one day your own children will follow, or other people around you might follow or appreciate them. Given a choice of being grumpy or happy, it's much better to be happy, I think. And I was thinking that, in terms of harmony, if we think the opposite of harmony is disharmony, and I know, for example, there's a thing in the Buddhist teachings called the 5 heinous crimes, or there's the 5 extremely negative actions, which will, at the end of this lifetime, lead to a rebirth which will be very, very difficult and traumatic, or very terrible. And one of those is causing disharmony in the Sangha. You create disharmony in the Sangha. And this is the ordained people, but to some extent we're sort of at another level below that. But creating disharmony is terrible karma, because you're forcing people apart. And usually by saying things that are untrue. And in some cases we have people who deliberately go out of their way to try and break up friendships by spreading rumours and things like that. And of course we see that with children on the internet. What they say on the internet to one another, of course, that we then classify that as online bullying. But it's creating terrible harm, and I've certainly seen kids who have been very, very, really harmed by kids I thought were really nice, gorgeous kids. But online, and then as a group, they're saying terrible things to some kids. And really, really awful. Sort of no awareness of how much damage they're doing to the well-being of that kid who's the victim of their campaign. It's awful. We do have, unfortunately, there's quite a bit of that in our society, what people do online. Yes. You have to speak loud. My hearing's really bad.
Speaking of young children, if you want to bring a gratitude practice into their day, like besides modelling it, what's a good way to help young children feel grateful and bring gratitude into their life and their day?
Okay, so let me get this right. The question is, what, apart from us modelling good behaviour, the sort of things we want them to learn, how else can we help kids to develop qualities of gratitude and good behaviour? Look, I think stories have a role to play there. Lots of societies have stories as a way of telling, which have a moral behind them that repeated often. I think stories are very good medium for helping kids. You can try and teach kids a little bit of mindfulness, but be aware it needs to be very, very short time. Let's sit down together and we'll just watch our breath, or be mindful of this, or let's have warm feelings for Granny or someone who's sick today and send our love in the form of light from our heart. There's really simple little things like that you can do. There's still not a lot of literature there to help you as a parent in terms of accessing those things. I know on the bookshop there's this book called Prince Siddhartha, which was published many decades ago, and that's to tell some stories of the Buddha and about him being kind and stuff like that. I know with our kids we used to read things from that from time to time as well.
What's the name of the book?
Prince Siddhartha.
Prince Siddhartha.
Yes, by John Landau, and I can't think of the name now. It'll come back to me later. John's an American, but he was one of the early students of Lama Yeshe. Elaine Brooke, John Landau and Elaine Brooke, I think, put it together. But look, it's a nice book, but there's not a lot of children's literature in terms of that sort of stuff yet. But look, there's loads of other things. We've got morality tales of different sorts. And you talk about, I guess, karma and trying to get them develop their self-awareness and obviously their emotional regulation as well. And when they lose it, you've got to give them the space to sort of calm down first, then try and look, tell me what happened. What did you feel when that happened? Did you like that? Did you like that feeling? What can we do to try and change that? Keep it simple and see how it works. But bringing up children's interesting, because they come with their own personalities and things as well. I know with our kids, we used to bring them here as often as we could. We brought them the ones, General Loy runs the monthly Dharma Club. We brought them along to that as well.
How old were they when you brought them?
Well, they were babies. We would bring them sitting on teachings. Or especially when Bucky, when we went to 2, it was a lot harder. But we bring them to pujas and different things like that. And when they were old enough, which is probably 4 or 5 years old, we bring them to the Dharma Club. Yeah. Do you sing with the hawk right now? Look, I mean, I don't in my own case, I was born in a Christian culture, the Moses were in me. My mother was a church organist, so I went to church every Sunday, whether I wanted to or not. I got packed off to boarding school when I was 9 and a half. So they would march, we literally had to march to church every Sunday, so as long as it wasn't raining. And then we had hours of Sunday school in the afternoon. So, and then obviously government schools in those days, or you had RE once a week, or someone would come in and you got divided up into the Protestants and the Anglicans and the Catholics and the Methodists, and there was no dividing into the Buddhists and the Muslims in those days, of course. They effectively didn't exist in Australia in the 1950s and 60s, when I went to school. So I was then brought up with very strong culture of Christianity and Bible stories and all that sort of stuff. And, for me, I didn't connect. I mean, the morals and the views with Christianity in terms of ethical behaviour, all that, yes, and honesty and all that, but how we say, seeing Jesus as my saviour, I didn't connect. But what I found when I was at uni and older, I just had this interest in to learn, find out about meditation, and also when I started travelling, I was fascinated by monks, Buddhist monks. And after a year and a half on the road, I ended up at Copan Monastery in the edge of Kathmandu Valley, did the November 1-month course under very basic conditions, and I sort of stayed after that. Yeah. But that was my path, so I mean, it's a different path for everyone, what suits different individuals. Oh, yeah.
I was just going to ask, what attracted you to Buddhism rather than the traditional Christianity that you were brought up in? But you kind of answered it a little bit.
Well, even when I was at uni, for a number of my years at uni, I actually lived in a theological college. Well, I was doing ag science. But they didn't have enough theological students, so they took on ordinary people such as myself. And even, look, I had lots of friends there. You know, the guys who were becoming ministers, and also being Methodists, they started to bring women in, which was the early 70s. I had loads of friends there in terms of I didn't have a different colour. You know, this is the influence of past lives. And like, for example, I could think in my case, what happened when you're on the backpacker trail, you keep running into the same people on often different places, and you make friends. I had a Dutch friend I keep running into, and you know, I ended up in Kathmandu in mid-October, and I was a bit sick and had dysentery for a long time. So look, I sit here, try and get myself well. But I'd heard of this Copan course when I was travelling through in the dark. And somewhere on the train, I think I trained to Patna, Delhi to Patna, ran into people. Oh yes, at a place called Copa. So then I got to Kathmandu, and this friend of mine, ran into this Dutch friend of mine, and he thought he knew where Copa was. I said, okay, well let's go there. So we set out one day after lunch, and we got hopefully lost. We had a beautiful walk through the villages and the rice fields and all that, and got there towards dark. So I signed up for the course, which was 1 month later, and he didn't, and so I also went back 1 month later, etc., the course, etc. Then I ran to him probably 6 months later, and he'd been in a place called Pokhara, and he'd found his liberation with magic mushrooms. He was very inspired by magic mushrooms. They'd opened his consciousness, so to speak. But the irony is, he and I had the same karma to go to Copan together, but he didn't have the karma to stay there. And I know when I lived in Dharamshala, all the Indians were there, and people like me, had Westerns there, some of them were there to smoke the dope. Because if you're into dope, smoking Dharamshala was a good place, but the Himalayas was a good place to get dope. And there were others for just travellers and others who were interested in Buddhism. But it was very interesting, the local Indians didn't have the karma or the interest. They had respect for His Holiness, but there was no real interest. Let's go and attend teachings. And again, there's a whole bunch of Westerners travelling through, not much interest to attend the teachings. Then there are other people, the karma was really, really strong. And unfortunately, I can't remember the stories, but you talk to people, and sort of out of nowhere, a whole bunch of coincidental things would happen. And suddenly life go from being like this to 6 weeks later, they're singing a Copan course, not knowing how they got there, so to speak. Other than that circumstance, they've been pulled out of the blue, so to speak, and ended up there. And in many cases, that's changed their lives enormously. Now you've got to answer your question, haven't you? But look, which religion we follow doesn't matter too much. The main thing is we develop a good heart, kindness, warmth, patience. We don't harm, try not to harm others. Those sorts of things. That's really the most important.
I actually need to drill a bit further into your motivation. Why Buddhism spoke to you when the Christian religion did not. I wanted to, I think there's more to find out there, because it's not just karma. There's something that speaks to you in Buddhism.
Well, probably so. Yeah. Well, I guess I know for me, for example, when I sort of did that with my Dutch friend, we went to Copan, the Swedish uncle Karen, who still I think lives there, but she was going to lead the meditations in that course. He said, sat me down and he said, look, you're aware there's going to be some difficult concepts such as karma and reincarnation. And my thing said, look, that's absolutely not a problem for me. It's just really, I guess, travelling through Asia and in India and that, and reading books. I was an avid reader and trying to read books. It just made sense to me. When I heard it, just absolutely made sense. So for me, there was no barrier about that, although I hadn't been brought up with those ideas at all. It was just, I was very interested in capturing the Rinpoche, who in his last life was a senior Chinese Dalai Lama. He said, look, us Lamas have to travel now, because we have to sort of catch up with our disciples who have taken rebirth in the West. He said, because taking rebirth in Tibet was, in order to practice Dharma again, wasn't going to work. So you've also taken rebirth in the West, so we have to travel around now to catch up with you. It was sort of a funny thing in one respect, but Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it that way. But he sort of made a comment along those lines when he was teaching in Bendigo. So, yeah. Anything else? Last chance. Otherwise, we have to send you out the door to face Christmas all by yourself. Hopefully, it's not too terrifying, and that you will have a nice, happy, joyous, peaceful Christmas. And of course, and stay away from the Boxing Day sales. They're too crazy. And the traffic's awful. I know 2 years ago to take my daughter to the airport on Boxing Day. We live just off Waverley Road, so you get on Waverley Road, attempt to turn right into Warwick Road, then get on the freeway, which is happens to be the main route for getting to Chadstone Shopping Centre. And what was a 100-metre distance took me 20 minutes to get through. It's because all these, if I go to the Boxing Day sales, I'm going to find happiness. But all I found was parking problems and a crowd of people, and probably something to go with no satisfaction. The cricket's much better to go to. That's definitely happiness. Well, no, as long as you're not English at the moment. Okay, we better finish off, so let's dedicate. So we start with a motivation, a positive motivation, and hopefully we've had some fun and enjoyed ourselves, and we've made our mind a little bit more clear, a little bit more calm and peaceful. And so we can say we've generated some positive energy and we've developed some positive wisdom. So what we want to do is to focus that on a really good, big goal. And so that goal or wish is that the positive energy we've created today in the past, the wisdom we develop, that we can share that with all others. That it becomes a cause of both myself to continue to develop all my inner qualities to the fullest extent. And that as I develop, I can share and guide others or help others to have the same inner experience of peace and happiness and calm, free from being under the control of anger and jealousy and attachment and then being involved in disharmony and all those things that make our life miserable and unhappiness. Instead, to be able to bring more joy and happiness within ourselves and within all the people that we interact with throughout the rest of this life and all future lives, to the point where ultimately we can lead each person to completely and utterly fulfill their own inner potential, to have that inner experience of perfection. Okay, thank you everyone for your attention. And I did have a funny thought. So if anyone who's a hard quiz fan, you see lots of repeats. So over January, if you go to the Tara Institute YouTube channel, you can watch the repeats. You can go through the previous Monday nights to keep yourself inspired and happy. Okay, so thanks everyone. Have a great Christmas. Thanks for coming.